and we should be live right now. And then I have to find you guys. Hopefully don't kick myself off like I've done in my last 2 interviews. No. Okay. Let me see if I can find you guys. Whoa, Boston. Yeah. All right. So we live. The Real Nordic Black family. I want to welcome some distinguished guests, Na D Dove and Molefi Asante. I can't believe I'm
excellent. No, it's fine.
Yeah. And who's known for being the grandfather of Afrocentricity or Afrocentrism. I definitely wasn't expecting him today, it's a great treat, as well with Nadi Dove, who's an author, lecturer, scholar in African American studies. Molefi's a professor and philosopher, who's written many books. As I stated, I wasn't expecting him today, so I didn't do the write up for him so much. But
I came to hear Nadav. I hope you understand that. Nadav is the most brilliant educator we got. So I came to hear Nadav.
Right.
That is not me today.
And in this political climate that's going on today, as we see and read, and especially from here and looking back in the States and internationally too, with the banning of books, the CRT, critical race theory, and police brutality, misconduct, and all kinds of stuff going on. I figured that she would be the perfect person to interview. And she's contributed to many articles and books. She had a book that was published called African Mothers, Bearers of Culture, Makers of Social Change in 1998. She contributed to the 2019 anthology, New Daughters of Africa. There's so many things that she's contributed to. I couldn't name them all, but in particular, the book, The Afrocentric School, a Blueprint, 2021. She's also co-edited a book with Dr. Molefi Asante. I don't know if it's coming out yet, called Being Human Being.
It's out.
It's out already? Okay. And contributed to a bunch of book chapters and articles in journals or whatnot. She also teaches, she's assistant professor at Temple University. Are you still currently there?
Yeah.
It teaches courses like Black Child, Family, Black Woman Representing Race, Intro to Africology, Afrocentric Theory and Methods, Ethnographic Methods, and so on. Speaking of Africology or whatnot, when you talk about Africology and Afrocentrism and African American studies, we have all these. What are some of the differences when we hear that? Because I myself, I had like a minor of, even though I didn't graduate, I had a minor in African studies in FIU, Florida International University in Miami. And now I hear of all these other disciplines. Could you explain a little bit of the differences between those, or Africology, African American studies, and Afro?
You have the inventor, creator of Africology.
Right. That's what I'm trying to ask you questions without. I know it's almost like it's kind of weird.
A small description, but I think having Dr. Asante here is
and he can shoot in, and Dr. Asante, you can shoot in at any time.
Yes, and fully explain. I will just.
I was gonna ask you that anyway. So yeah.
Yes. So from my recognition of Africology as a professor grounded in it, it's a discipline in of itself. It's it's different from the other Black disciplines because
Mm,
it's not grounded in a Eurocentric orientation of who African people are and defining African people theoretically within the European or Arab-based constructs of who African people have been designed to be. Africa
mm,
is a discipline that is grounded in truth about African people from ancient times,
mm.
birth of humanity in Africa to the current day. So there's a cultural link in terms of trying to remember who we are by providing the evidence and the knowledge of who we are over time. And it's one
And drawn a lot upon ancient sources and ancient
current,
tradition and things
yeah,
like that, correct?
from a
Yeah.
cultural perspective, and learning the cultural distinctions among people, because we're not coming from a genetic-based theory of humanity.
Mm,
But Dr. Asante, that's,
mm,
he's gone through the process and history of developing the actual discipline.
mm.
The-
Now you
the-
she yeah,
If
go
I
ahead.
may, yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to add that africology is a discipline that we also say in a short form, we say it is the study of all African phenomena
Mm,
from the standpoint of being Africans being agents and subjects of human narratives rather than spectators to Europe or any other culture. That you can have people who are studying African phenomena, but they don't necessarily study it from the standpoint of being Afrocentric. And we don't use Afrocentrism, we use Afrocentricity when we're talking about it as a noun, because Afrocentrism sounds almost like a religion. And it also gives the impression that it's only ideological. But
right.
we talk about orientation, we talk about methods, we talk about theories. So africology is the Afrocentric study of African phenomena in all instances. So that's one short way of saying it. So if you're studying concepts of gestures or concepts of harmony or architecture or music, we want to know what is the voice of the African in that discussion. That's what the africologist wants to know. And the africologist wants to know that and tries to answer that by what we call centering herself or himself in a place where African people are agents or subjects of the conversation. So we interrogate ourselves first, and that's the key to it.
Well, because growing up, when I've listened to certain scholars like John Henry Clark and certain things like that, and sometimes I've heard people try to give it a negative connotation, Afrocentricity, and stuff like that, or call them demagogues, as Louis Gates had once called it, or whatnot. And some people, they don't have a full understanding of it, and well, some people may even try to compare it to now the critical race theory.
Well, Dr. Dub, this is your. You should. I'm gonna let you.
Here because
No, I'm not in it, and I'm not saying, and I'm trying to kind of talk more for the audience in a way, because I pretty know what's going on. But
okay,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, here's the thing: a critical race theory, in its origin, is something that came about with Derek Bell and Kimberly Kinshaw, two professors. I knew Derek Bell. I don't think I've ever met Kimberly, but she teaches at my old school, UCLA. And they are law professors. They were law professors. Derek is gone, but they were law professors. And what they decided in the American society, they decided that you could not just look at race alone, the concept of race alone, when you were looking at discrimination and the behavior, the anti-African behavior. You had to look at other aspects of the society, like class, like gender. You have to look, and they created this notion of intersectionality. Kimberly Crenshaw is mainly responsible for intersectionality, but the idea was that you have to make more complex the question about what has happened, particularly in terms of the African population in the United States. You can't just simply base it on color. You have to base it on things that are much more subtle and nuanced, and some things are not nuanced, like class and gender and so forth. So that is what critical race theory was or is in a theoretical sense. But the white population that's reactionary in the United States has taken the notion of critical race theory to mean anything that's critical of white people. That's where you get critical. So they're saying that their children are going to school and their children are learning that Columbus did not discover America. That's critical race theory. You can't teach that.
Right.
Their children are learning that the Europeans, when they came to America, killed the Native Americans. So they say you can't teach that. That's the thing.
So what do you think? Is it because of the labeling? You know, I mean, do you think if you were to go back in the creation of this thing, where do you think? I'm not gonna say it went wrong, but where do you think that it could have done better, where it wouldn't be so reactionary for?
This is a cultural thing. The reaction is totally indicative of the cultural belief.
Right.
And
so no matter what, it would have been a reaction, like
the thing is,
right.
This is the voice that they've been suppressing for hundreds of years. So when angle of reality comes up, the discussion of the oppression of people on spurious ideas which are not true,
right?
Then the objective is to crush it, and there's a whole thousands of years of crushing going on, and domination and imposition of these ideas against ourselves. So it's absolutely natural.
Yeah.
There'd be this attempt to stop truth from leaking out through, the ways that it's been silenced.
Correct. Now, and I know Dove has some slides to show us. I got just a few more questions. I was gonna ask your background, because when I've seen your book and everything like that, I would have figured it was some sister from Atlanta, Georgia, or somewhere that created this blueprint. And then when I first saw you and heard your voice, you had a Brit accent. I was a bit surprised. So is your background, you grew up in Great Britain, obviously?
Well, my formative years were in Ghana and Nigeria, so
okay.
I was blessed to have that time.
Okay.
Being African and then coming to the UK.
Okay.
Being forced to hear things and learn things that were actually not true about Africa and African people, my family, and who I am. So I was really blessed, because those people who came and were born inside it and lived inside it had to learn untruths and live with the with the debased, demonized versions of who African humanity was supposed to represent. So I didn't go through that. I could see it was a lie immediately because of my own experience.
And so how long have you been at it as far as the African or Afrocentric
Oh,
schools is
well,
concerned in the
it's an,
developing?
it's another blessing because um, in the 90s, when I'd written that book, The African Mothers, I I taught during the golden era or at Temple University in the Department of African and American Studies, and I
Yeah.
graduated from Buffalo State University of New York. So, you know, as I say, it was a blessing. So I moved into it then, and it really cemented ideas, you know, that I'd experienced. It kind of made them clear and gave
Mm,
a theoretical sort of foundation in which ideas could develop related to one's experience. So
mm,
I've had that since from the 90s.
right. You know, I wanted to ask this one question closer to the end, but I ask it now, and also maybe Sante can to delve in on this. It's just a plain, simple question. Did Black people make progress? Looking at the climate in the world today, in your opinion, have we made progress?
Do you want me to, or you
Yeah,
are?
yeah.
uh,
And just,
I just give a little thing. I
right.
say that if we're looking at the idea of progress from a Eurocentric perspective, the
Mm,
idea of evolution, people starting from monkeys and becoming humans and so on, it's all a construct to me.
yeah.
And you know, because when we actually look historically and historically at the African the African origin of humanity, we actually see that for Black people, this is a retrograde motion. It's not about progress for African people.
Mm,
It's the complete opposite, and we're being made to see a European version of the idea of progress as being dated from a particular time of enslavement and conquest,
mm,
that that time when Europeans or other conquerors got involved, that's the beginning of progress for African people. So everything that came before, there's no information about that. It's suppressed and crushed. So, you know, the reality is that when we use the Afrocentric theoretical perspective to find the story, the story is the opposite of the one that's inside the concept of progress.
mm,
Dr.
So
Asante.
instead of some sort of notion of progress as evolution, Dr. Dove is talking about that there may have been a devolution. In other
mm,
words, if you take the notion that we have argued in our book that we wrote, Being Human Being.
Cause you know white folks are gonna be saying y'all ain't walking around with chains no more. You ain't, the
Yeah,
slavery and
yeah.
all that. And so you
Yeah,
get
well,
all of that.
we were not walking around with chains before we saw them either. So,
Mm,
no,
mm,
that period of history. I mean, that period of history was an accident of history that
right,
existed for a short period of time, given the thousands of years of
right.
human history. Homo sapiens rose first on the continent of Africa. There are no
Absolutely.
Homo sapiens anywhere else except Africa
No doubt.
until 70,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens started migrating out of Africa. So
Mm,
all human beings started in Africa. When we started in Africa, we started with an idea where human beings may
mm,
very well have been different, but we didn't rank difference. It was
right,
the Arabs and the Europeans who put rankings on difference, and to
right.
say that because you are this complexion, or you're this short, or you're this tall, you have different kinds of ways to be looked at. I mean, we never
Mm,
did that. That was not an African way. So in a sense, there's a devolution about thinking about human beings, because we saw human beings as human beings, regardless to their complexion or regardless to their stature or the language they spoke and that kind of thing. So this notion of ranking difference is contrary to Homo sapiens and contrary to the way we were at the beginning. See, so have we stopped people from taking advantage of us in a negative way? Yes. There are certain things you can't say to me that maybe 100 years ago you could say to my great grandfather, and that was because of force, because of control, other sorts of brutality. But now you can't do that, and you wouldn't think of doing that. Now, is that progress? No, it is just that finally, African people have throughout the world began to assert their own culture. That's basically what has happened, you see? And our assertion is itself considered for some people to be progress, you see?
And I didn't, not like I said earlier, I didn't realize you were going to be here because there were so many things on African philosophy and African spirituality, which I would like to get into after Dr.
Dove, one of these days down the road,
absolutely,
you can have me on the program, but I don't want to take your program today. Because
when it comes to African spirituality and philosophy, that's why I definitely want to get on with you in a future date.
Well, the education and the Afrocentricity, absolutely, I mean, that's something to really probe, because the work that she did in Ghana and actually on the ground studying with the women. And
I was going to mention that you've been in Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Ghana, especially, and throughout the diaspora, Canada, UK, and now in Philly. Some people call it Philadelphia, which is unfortunate.
Well, we got a big murder rate here, that's for sure.
Exactly. Right. No, what's the name of the HBCU? I actually went to a HBCU in Oklahoma, Langston University, I know it well. Mm-hmm. Right, for a few years. What's the name of the one in Philly again?
Lincoln.
Right.
And Cheney. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, you have some slides for us. We can get into that if you want. Yeah. My audience would definitely love that right there. Oh yeah, let me what am I talking about? I have to give you the keys to the kingdom.
Right, and I have to remember how to use those keys.
Made you the host now.
Okay. Hopefully.
Yeah.
I have to share, don't I? Sorry.
Yeah.
I have to share my screen there and get to my PowerPoint.
Yeah. No problem.
Can you see the PowerPoint in the back there or no?
There we go. You're sharing screen now. Now we see it.
Okay.
Yep. There we go.
Okay. So yeah, this is the cover of the book, and it's showing Ani and Tutu. They are together, husband and wife, high priest and priestess, and they are having their hearts weighed against Ma'at's feather of truth. And, their heart is being weighed against the feather of truth, as I've said. But this is to really reinforce the idea that Ma'at can only exist with female-male reciprocity, because they are the producers of life and culture. And I'm taking a Jopian perspective on this, cradle theory perspective on this. And my art is grounded in that balance, truth, reciprocity, that relationship between those who can create life and those who can, and therefore culture. So that's the
What
image.
some would call ma'at.
Yes,
Right.
the principles of ma'at. And you
Right.
can see that she is there in the feather of truth, there on the scales of justice.
Right.
That's where she's represented.
And some wouldn't some say, what do they use now for the justice? That they said that they took, I forgot the current.
The scales of justice.
Yeah, the scales of justice, but there was a modern depiction of justice now where there's a Eurocentric, I forgot the name of it, but there's a connection here. Absolutely.
It's blindfolded. So
Yeah.
there's much that's borrowed because apparently
Yeah.
she wants to remain sort of neutral person, but she can't be neutral to this because you have to believe in her practice, the principles that she stands for to actually have justice. So I could, one could say from the africological perspective that Black people, wherever they are in the world, who are fighting for justice are connected to their ancient heritage and legacy of Ma'at and what they understand to be justice. Therefore, the current blindfolded justice is a justice that doesn't exist for Africa. It's what that limits the movement of justice, whereas justice itself is something that you can attain, but you have to keep on going if you see its limitations, which is what's happening to African people. Conquered by these people. So let's see. I've got friends who've helped me. I've shown this before, but my family, Dr. Asante, Carmel Cameron, who helped me in the UK, we worked together to start the Winnie Mandela Supplementary School, which was like a Saturday school and a Tuesday school. Dr. John Oke, who was the chairperson, director of the Camden Black Parents and Teachers in London, and he's a Nigerian man. Well, he's recently passed away, but he ran that organization and the school came through because of his presence and because he wanted it to. He enabled us. Dr. Mwalimu Shuja, who was the director of the Council of Independent Black Institutions. He was the director, and I worked in that institution. And so I learned more about the African American school history, because in the UK we had a supplementary school, which was part-time, but in the US there were schools dotted all over the US that were full-time schools teaching an idea. So I was blessed to be there. Kenya Shuja is like Dr. Shuja's daughter. They produced the Encyclopedia of African Cultural Heritage in North America, a wonderful resource. And she is a person of great repute, an anthropologist. She has helped to edit this book that I'm about to show you. A wonderful person. Her is my daughter, and she was a child of the supplementary school movement, and she's now taking her doctorate at Dr. Agu, it was the person I worked with. He was my line manager in Ghana, working for UNICEF, and he enabled me to carry out an Afrocentric investigation of child upbringing practices across Ghana. And Ayo Sakai, I mentioned because she is Universal Rights Publications. She invested in the book and believed in me when she is actually a lone publisher hailing from Jamaica, who struggled in the US to create this book publishing company, and she, believed, and in fact, all her works are all from people like Dr. Asante. They're all actually challenging most of the readings that are published and out there and so available. So, I'm blessed and I thank her for that. And these are the people that in the book that said yes. Dr. Joyce King, as you can see, highly regarded in the whole area of teaching and education. She's an educator for teachers in the country. Dr. Mark Mosby, who is a publisher, writer, broadcaster. It's endless what you could say about this fabulous woman. She sanctioned the book and put her comments on it. Blessed again, Dr. Sally Ann, Doctor of Egyptology and Psychology, who is a woman.
I've definitely heard of that one right there. I think I might have reached out to her because she focuses on Nubia, I think.
Yes, she
And
does.
I reached out to her for an interview a while back. Yeah, we had a little dialogue. So I definitely, yeah.
Yeah, she's an Egyptologist who's sort of banned from Egyptology because
Yeah, she's awesome.
African origins of it, which of course it goes against the Dr. Charlotte Fort Parnell, who again is another educator, but as a mother, she raised all her children in the Afrocentric schools, so I learned of her through the Council of Independent Black Institution. She sanctioned the book, which is wonderful because she's gone through the process, her children have gone through the process. And again, Dr. Agu, consultant, former director of education. I worked for him, to and Dr. Kimani Nahusi. I'm not sure if you know of him, but he is international. Well, he studies chematology.
Okay.
He teaches in our department. He's a colleague. He teaches classical African history in the department of anthropology.
So that name was almost similar to this one brother out there in Ghana right now, dealing with Egyptology, named Kabon. He's on. That brother's on fire out there. Yeah, he's on fire. Yeah.
So the theory is the foundation of the discipline of africology, in short. Most importantly, addressing the matter of education as it provides the episteme knowledge, or sabayet, in which all phenomena, as Dr. Asante has previously said, but all phenomena pertaining to Africa can be learned, discovered, rediscovered, and analyzed. So just use the symbols for writing, the meta-nature. And of course, we understand that many parents have been aware of the miseducation. It's nothing new.
Absolutely.
However, the difference in this book is that it is a comprehensive education book that provides the curriculum that you can use and change around if you want to, but it's actually there, and it has a logic to it because it is grounded in research that came out of Ghana when looking at child's upbringing practices and looking at the achievements and skills development of children, who most of whom were not literate. So this is the introduction. This is the menu, so that
Right. Nice. Racialization, humanity, reclaiming African knowledge. Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So So the baseline study significance, right? Well, it was grounded in about 800 parents. It's actually more than that, but that will do. As we know, we Piaget's ideas were based on his 5 children, I believe, and this is a global, construct in terms
Right.
of cognitive development in children. So this study in this book, the basis of this book and the development of the curriculum is grounded in these parents' experiences of raising their children and their children's skills development over time. And I've used a different type of approach to the normal approach to something called education. I don't know, how do I get to the next one? That's it. Okay, it's written for the African diaspora teachers and students wherever they exist in the world, because there are different schools that you can develop, and that's included in the book. The different types of Afrocentric schools, from somebody's sitting room to a building in a rural or urban setting. So,
because to be honest, I almost thought about it at some point to do something like this out here. It was a couple of I ran into an African brother out here from Guinea-Bissau, and I actually talked to him about doing something like this, but I never thought that I was able to do that. But as I'm seeing what's around me, and and other people doing things, it gave me a lot more hope to and inspiration to do something like this. And when I saw that you had this book and blueprint going circulating, I never knew about this. But yeah, it was an idea that I actually had some sort of something on the side out here in Norway, because it's not too many. I mean, you have a good amount of Africans, but mainly Somalian, and not so many Western Africans. But the ones that are here, I mean, you have Gambians and Nigerians, but it doesn't seem like they have too many things going on outside of, unlike the Arabs or Islamic schools on the side, they don't have too many African-centered classes outside the normal school. And so I think there's a need. And yeah, so I think this is a great idea.
That's an absolute need. And of course, what the book does is give some background, some information, some truth of the history and development of, that can be used as a resource.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
And you can build upon that. It's just very difficult to find the information in the first place.
Yeah.
The book has stuff there to be working with. You could technically, get your school together. This is a foundation, because it's just based on schools that existed before and knowledge that is being defined and and examined, and so
you don't have to be Umar Johnson to start a school out here. No, I was just playing.
You must be playing.
I knew he was gonna catch it. I knew he was gonna catch it or something.
but it's okay.
We still waiting for that school, huh?
We need all soldiers, man. We need
no
all
doubt,
soldiers.
no doubt.
So it's grounded in a belief in the potential and ability of children to feel their special genius when they're taught from an Afrocentric perspective. The educator who will teach the children, maybe a parent, guardian, or interested person, these are involved in. The administrator wishes to develop Afrocentric schools, the student who will learn from the curriculum. These are the readers who would be interested in this book, why it's you know, what the focus of the book is to a sort of readership, and the scholar who will find new theories, approaches, and practices for study. And just the Afrocentric idea, the more knowledge we have about the true story of Africa, the more enabled the child becomes in knowing who she, he, they are in the world at this time. It's believed that children can then understand their potential and possibilities of who they may become. And we know there's evidence from the schools that have existed before, and teaching in the departments, the undergraduate students and so on, because it always happens. That, yeah.
Can I pause you just for 1 second? Because this question came to mind, and maybe Asante can chime in after. When it comes to, because I hear you talking about, and I heard you another talk, you know, talking about, you know, and I love the concept of Afrocentrism, and also you talked about, you know, humanness, you know, oneness, everybody being of one race. And sometimes certain people they try to say that a negative connotation, saying that when we talk about Afrocentricity or central to Africa, or whatever, African-centered schools, that's kind of a separation between oneness. In one sense, you talk about humanity and oneness or whatever, and then, but are we, you know, then we're talking about Afrocentric thought and things like that. Are we, but then in another sense, are we trying to separate humans? But, or would you say it's more of a synergetic relationship when you talk about, and that's the way I see it in a way, when you talk about Afrocentricity and African oneness, because everything, as you said, Santi, and we all know that, you know, everything started in Africa, and all concepts and ideas. Do you see that as more of a synergetic relationship, as far as being a humanist and also in the oneness, you know, talking about human race as one as a whole, and at the same time, you know, talking about Afrocentricity and African centeredness and stuff like that? How do you see that? Some people would say that that's a contradiction, but some don't see that as a contradiction. I don't. I see the relationship as that. But what would you guys say to that? I'm sorry, but yeah.
Just be very brief with this. The African origin of civilization. What we're dealing with now is the cultural construction of race, which has divided humanity and hierarchicalized humanity on spurious grounds, really, even to your, you know, your private parts. Everything has been hierarchicalized. So even though it's a melanin content thing that we've used, we're all completely separated. And what we do with africology is show that we began not separated, and we've come to this situation at the moment, and it's a falsehood. The reason that we are all separated in this way is based on falsehood, and we're trying to tell the truth of how that happened. So we have to locate ourselves in the story, when the moments took place, who did it. So there is no contradiction for africology as far as I can see, Dr. Asante.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I guess I would say that the difference between Afrocentricity and, say, Eurocentricity is that Eurocentricity, it becomes an ethnocentric viewpoint. And an ethnocentric viewpoint is one where you valorize a particular people above other people. And you assume that by valorizing them and making them, in their minds, you know, better than other people, that they are in fact, people who can have a hegemony over other people. But Afrocentricity is never seeking any hegemony over anybody. Afrocentricity says, as Dr. Dove explains, that we see that the best pattern for human beings is to at least interrogate Africa. That's what we started from. What do the Africans believe about human relationships? What did the Africans expect to happen when they violated what was considered to be the values and the attitudes of people in their communities and so on. So there are certain questions that are at the beginning of Homo sapiens that we have to interrogate and we have to ask. And we can't ask those questions simply by trying to get the answers from those who, once they left Africa, began to hate even the source of their own origins. I mean, how do you explain that? I mean, we can't now go into those places and say, okay, these values of war and these values of separating human beings on the basis of color and on the basis of language and religion, that these are the values now we have to interrogate. No, what were the values before that? That's the question I want to ask. Before you were a Muslim, before you were a Christian, before you were a Jew, before you were a Hebrew or a Hindu, what is it? What is the where were we? How did humans come to these separations? Right. You see, that's a different question.
Yes, that's what we're looking at. So we're trying to build the evidence of truth, use truth to build the evidence. And so we have an episteme, knowledge based on truth, that is fundamental to africology. And of course, there are people who pretend and fit into the normal sort of eurocentric and conquestial ideas of these Africans must be mad, and there's a romantic element of what they're saying, all kinds of crazy things that are foisted upon. They're always under threat for ideas that challenge the the status quo, the norm that we're living in. And
when you hear the word, and there was a book written about it, Yorugu, what comes to mind?
So
that's Marimba Ani's work. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
What Marimba Ani, and if you read the introduction to that book, you can see that I had a lot to do with her working on this and trying to get it published.
Absolutely.
But the interesting thing about Yorugu is that what she's doing is taking out of African tradition and culture some of the narratives that explain what happens when people transgress the normal order of African business and so on. And so Yorugu for her really explains what has happened to the European constructs that have been developed. I mean, the notion of, you mentioned earlier about progress. One of the things that she attacks is the notion of progress. Yeah. The other thing she attacks in that is objectivity, where Europeans say, you got to be objective. She says, well, what they're talking about is the fact that you have to at least follow their patterns and their models, because they have created those things. So, and she says that, in the mythology, this notion of Yorugu was something that really was in violation, you see. So it's a wonderful portrayal, I think, of what has happened in terms of the decline of human civilization.
Right.
I mean, when you start talking about genocide, and when you start talking about the
climate change, and
all these things, this stuff, the persecutions, the climate change, pollution of the sea, pollution of space. When you start thinking about that, it's a euphemism to say mankind or human beings have done this, when in fact as Michael Bratley said in his book, The Iceman Inheritance, that this is something that mainly Europeans have done. Right. But when it's bad, we all are part of it. But when it's good, it's only a special group. Right, for sure.
Right.
In respect to the whole idea of progress and evolution, because when we do look back to some of the ancient scientists like the San people, South Africa.
Right, right, right.
How the planets moved 40,000 years ago. We have to question, what are you talking about in this idea of progress? We still have to be able to embrace ideas about ourselves and get rid of the European mindset people actually are. So, and what has happened to them and what has happened to us in terms of we're always developing the episteme, the knowledge to be able to look at the truth of this matter, because it challenges evolution, which is a normal part of our, theoretical framework in judging anybody. This is what we use, and it's completely alien to African people, but we use it as a way of judgment on how far people have come, or the terms that we use to say we're progressive and we're this and that,
Absolutely.
Sorry.
No, Nice. The consider instruction race to be a falsehood. Absolutely. Social construct. Yeah.
It's true to say we live and die every day, and as you pointed out, that we have a very high rate of death in Philadelphia. And
unfortunately.
Yes, and it is an educational thing, because these young people have no idea of who they really are and their potential in life, because they're not being told anything about. They're just being debased and demonized from the beginning, coming into that and living out that. So the value of African life is nothing. And that's what it's supposed to be, because we're all being taught this. This is how culture works. If we look at the paradigm and the genetic version of who we are, we're all being cubbyholed or sectioned into these areas based on our genetic dispositions and differences. But once we look culturally, we can answer some of these difficult questions about, why we can be Black and then thinking a way that is anti-Black and anti-African culture, because that's what's being imposed upon us every day, the values through institutional development. So the institutions hold up the culture, they read. You can't have a culture without institutions, and all of them are culturally formed to hate African people. That is the nature of the culture. It's anti-African, anti-Black, anti-women, anti-children, so on and so forth. You could say so many antis. And each of these institutions, these beliefs are ensconced in them, as they are in our brains. So we're going out there as Black people, doesn't matter whether you're light and privileged like me or very, very dark and, demonized in the hierarchy. If that stuff is in our minds, we hate ourselves, because that's what culture is telling us to do. You go to school, you can hear from countless children, Black children, what they learned at school. Nothing about Africa, nothing positive. A couple of things about enslavement and the idea of progress from enslavement. A couple of sentences. I mean, they've even had books that have said that African people arrived here as workers. So, it's cultural.
It's very good point that you've made there, because I was just thinking as you were talking of the Supreme Court justice, the most conservative justice, the most reactionary justice that we have in the United States in the Supreme Court is a Black man.
Clarence
His
Thomas.
name is Clarence Thomas, right?
Right.
And he's a Black man.
Oh,
Who,
but he's in trouble now.
well,
Hey,
he's
hey,
a Black.
yeah.
He's a Black man who has been a very reactionary when it has come to any issues regarding the advancement of social or cultural relationships in the United States of America. Well, he was trained that way. He was the society itself took him from a young boy, put him into the Catholic schools, educated him with the Catholic colleges, and when he came out, he had almost nothing that related to African culture. He had never studied African culture or even African American history. They didn't teach that at Holy Cross or wherever he went.
Right.
So when he came out, his mind basically was Eurocentric, and he has been more Eurocentric than the white people on the Supreme Court. They've had to sort of check him. Hey man, you're going too far now, But self-hatred is a part of the process. But if you were basing it simply on genetics and biology, you would think that, oh, he's a Black man. So as a Black man, he's definitely going to be, and he's not just Black, he's dark. He's a very Black man. So he's definitely going to be clear. No, he's very confused. So that's why the point that Dr. Dove is making about genetics and biology is a good point. You don't, and he certainly Clarence.
And he ain't the only one. He ain't the only one. They have he ain't the only one. They have a bunch of them around, and international too.
Absolutely. Because they have never interrogated themselves in their own culture. They don't know their history. They have no idea who Africans are, and this desire to be a part of the white culture takes them in that direction, and they become like the white culture, anti-African. And so Clarence Thomas, we got a word for Clarence Thomas. We call it Clarencization. When a person is Clarencized, they are people who basically have lost their own mind and their own focus, their own compass, and they have taken on all of the negative parts, you see.
Out of his African mind.
And when you look at it from a cultural perspective, an Afroecological perspective, we recognize that people can have knowledge and change.
Yes.
We've seen it. We know through these, we know as educators in the university setting, we know in our lives as parents and family, that with information and knowledge and truth, which comes with logic, you can't have logic without truth, then people can change, they can transform. If they're genetically predispositioned to be a certain thing, they can never change. They will all do that. And what type of life are we looking towards? We have to be able to recognize how this thing was constructed and why it was constructed, and it is achieving its purpose, but because based on groundless, because it's not actually true, the holes are appearing.
And I and maybe you can. Oh, now go ahead. The Sankofa. Let's go. No, I was going to say something, but that's fine. No problem.
To take the finest knowledge of the past to use as the building blocks of the future, which is what africology does. Well, it's always looking, investigating, what have we actually done? What have we achieved? And it's so amazing that, it shows us the potential of what we may become because we've already done it. It's not somebody's imagination of what we might become based on where we are at the moment. We're looking at what we may become based on what we've actually been. So it's a whole different way of looking at the world. And Sankofa is in every carved out false country in Africa. There is that belief. It may not be called Sankofa, but it's a belief that is based on your relationship with your ancestors. So the Afrocentric educator, whoever that person is a person seeking to transform into the best person. One is not perfect. So we don't come in thinking, oh, I know everything. I'm on the plateau. You know, I am great. I'm in some kind of hierarchy. I'm superior to you. We don't do any of that because it's crazy. It's not true. And that we're all learning and growing. We never stop doing that. And, you know, and what we do is an example to the children. We have to be consciously aware of this, not just be teaching them something, but living a different life. We understand what we're teaching as part of who we are. It's because, again, it's about logic, and children understand logic because it's based in truth. If it's not based,
sometimes better than adults. Absolutely.
Because logic,
they call a spade a spade.
It has a sound to it. You see, when you speak it or have it vibrationally as a human being, when you have logic, it makes a harmonious, balanced, beautiful sound, and a child can pick up this. So if you are a liar and a creep, a child can do this.
Can pick that. Right.
You know, it's not the language so much child, but it's the vibrationary sound thing that the child you know, so that's why there's so much madness, because of all these lies perpetrated. You know, it makes us all ill if we use that, if we become liars as a result of lying, or if we believe in lies and think that that is truth. Things stand the test of time. So the curriculum is guided by grammar, rhetoric, logic, which comes out of Kemet. It has been stolen and plagiarized and used, you know, in liberal arts and so on and so forth in the modern idiom. But if you notice, all these are taught separately in the Eurocentric and other types of ways of teaching, whereas they're all part of one thing. You can't actually, you know, you have to accommodate what all those things are together in a holistic way. So the curriculum is divided into these areas, but they're all connected, overlapping.
And in essence, that's what African philosophy is all about. Having that,
Yes. Yeah. So that's the book. I don't know. I hope I'll just play for a minute to see if it works. It's a little child.
Oh.
And tell me if you can hear it, because you might not hear it.
Oh, yeah. Playing the djembe. Wow.
I'll go to the next one, but that's in the book, you see, because there are these sites you can go into. This is another, the brother of.
Wow.
So I just want him to. It's got a little bit at the beginning. It doesn't matter, but you know, there is two. It's example for the children.
Little brother Nurse in San Francisco. He got one. He used to know Dunduma. He got one. He used to know Dunduma. What about Janae? Huh? What about Janae? He knows how to play German with Dumba. Don't know how to do the story. He doesn't know how to do like that. He just know how to do like that. He just know. Can you get it?
Wow.
I said, do what? Do. No, it's two, but now it's 10. Because it's two now, so I cannot.
Years old.
I just wanted you to see that because
Mm,
you can get the links in the book. So that you
absolutely.
watch them.
And I'll drop the links of your book and things underneath this video as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
These are some girl drummers in South Africa, but I don't know, from Walmer Township. I don't know if you've got time to see them for a minute. Do you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Kosa. Oh.
Just wanted to show, that's the end of the slide, that boys and girls, and that it's not a sort of limited thing, any of these things, and to just give examples of that
All right.
children can learn. So
Well, I appreciate all of that information. And I know my audience is going to appreciate all of that information as well as they go back to this video. And I'm going to post it in different places and different Facebook groups here with Africans and stuff like that. So we'll see. I definitely, as we talked about, Mr. Asante, would like to reach out to you too towards a interview in the future, which
Okay.
will be based on African spirituality and philosophy strictly, because I want to get into the religionist thing and African
Well,
thought.
I don't do much with religion, but
Yeah,
we
I
can talk
understand.
about philosophy. Okay, all
I
right.
get it. I
Yeah,
get
all
it.
right.
In relation to
Okay.
African thought and yeah, I get you. I get you. I purchased one of your books, by the way, way back in the day.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
yeah. But I appreciate it. No, Dove. You resemble my mother, who just passed 2 years ago.
I'm sorry.
So when I actually and they're gonna hear this now, I told a couple of people when I saw your interview, it kind of almost brought a tear to my eye because it was weird, because I've been still mourning in a way. It's been 2 years, and your presence it reminds me of my mother, and the only difference is the British accent instead of a Southern accent. That's about it. But
Yeah.
I swear, when you
That's
have in my family on my Facebook will know that I'm not lying.
That's right.
So
So honored, and you make a wonderful son. So thank
don't get me started. Don't get me started for real.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
that's great.
I appreciate you, and I appreciate you too, sir.
Thank you very
I
much.
wasn't
My pleasure.
expecting, your presence. I thank
Well-
you for blessing your presence and both of you guys.
Well, you make us feel very happy that at least the work is being done in Oslo by somebody. Go
No
ahead.
doubt, no
Keep
doubt, no
moving.
doubt.
I know.
All right,
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
all right. Thank you, guys.
you.
All right.